This is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Alexandra Renders, founder and CEO of Willow. Welcome to the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's cool to be talking to somebody else in New Hampshire. That's always cool. And I want to let people know that we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. You can see that icon up there. It says listen on Newsly. Use coupon code GHOST to get 1 month free premium subscription. We will be on the Newsly platform later tonight. That's an audio platform for podcasts, so you can listen to that on the go. And thank you for being on the show. This is actually going to be episode 957 of the Family Electric Ghost podcast. We've been on the air, tracking on Apple Podcast there since 2016. This episode, we're going to talk about bringing spiritual principles to capitalism. And I think that's a cool thing. So we'll get into that. But thank you again for being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So what is caring capitalism? Because I think a lot of times, people that say capitalism, they just assume it's always like the best thing, and they don't consider, that sometimes that word, the first word you put there, caring, is not actually part of it.
Yeah, that's the problem, I think. I think that's why we have so many problems in the world. And I think, being a 37-year Wall Street veteran, I have seen things for our human family go from bad to worse. And I've been in boardrooms, I've been in senior management in many companies. And I can say that the behavior I've seen has nothing to do with caring. And I've really come to the conclusion that that's the only thing that's really going to heal our businesses and thus humanity. So that's what caring is. It's bringing principles of love and care to our businesses.
Well, I think that's important. And being an artist, I'm an artist, kind of like is my core. I'm a music producer, and and a lot of writers, singer-songwriters, we try to strive for like authentic honesty, or try to talk about the world's problems. And, a lot of us have spiritual kind of backgrounds, and we will want to see that in the rest of the world. They want to see that in the companies we work for and the investments that we have. And some people assume with today, like, oh, you got crypto, you have all these modern things, and they don't actually think about, is that actually caring? Can they show that they're actually being positive? Are they showing that they actually, care about that? And I think it's very cool to have somebody bring about the idea of spiritual principles and capitalism and investing and things like that, because a lot of people, they just think automatically like, well, I guess I can't really do that. So I guess I have to live with the fact that I can't do that.
Yeah. So I think that brings up a broader and a bigger picture. I want to say it was maybe a decade or two ago, there was this movement towards conscious capitalism. And that's where this thing called ESG-SRI, which is environmental, social governance, and social responsibility, came out. And that was the beginning of it. And I have to say, at the beginning, I said, I of course I want to do what's right for humanity. So I became that type of manager. However, it's flawed because it's based on quotas, and it's based on just, making policy before you have a true answer. Okay. Like electric cars, before you actually have the infrastructure to put in electric cars. And also to realize that to run electricity in this country, we use coal, we use gas, we still use these dirty quote unquote things. So it's what I found was ESG-SRI for me was extremely flawed. And what it was doing was it was creating, it was actually disenfranchising the lower income groups even more. It was
expensive. Yeah.
Right. So, at
Yeah.
one point I said, this isn't working. Things have gone from bad to worse. Tension is worse. Civil unrest is worse. Tension between race, gender, socioeconomic classes, it's worse. So I'm like, okay, this is broken. This isn't working. And, sitting in the boardrooms and sitting in senior management, when I watched quotas, these people didn't believe in the quotas. They were doing it because
Hmm.
it looked good. That was
Yeah.
greenwashing. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not going to bring about
Was it
real
really
change.
like was it really like marketing? Because you see a lot of companies, they'll market. Like you see if it goes
Mm-hmm,
on like now with the problem with a lot of
mm-hmm,
electric vehicles are the
mm-hmm,
rare metals you have to get out of Africa. There's a
mm-hmm,
lot of child labor. There's a lot of
mm-hmm.
environmental destruction. And so the idea of being in a green car, well, you're actually, encouraging child slave labor and the destruction of the environment and like really bad, you know, you know, you know, like mercenary groups going around and taking over mines. So
Yeah,
like people,
slavery is at the highest level it's ever been in our history.
yeah, but then you get companies like, not to, to put them up, but a smartphone company will say, oh, we're doing the thing is like, this is environmentally safe. It's like, well, if you actually look under the covers, it's not like so trying to make sure that you make the right choice, but a lot of times like their PR is pushing out this image that is like, oh, this is green, this is good, and then you actually get some people that do the undercover investigation, and it's not. It's like what you said. It's like a smoke screen.
Yeah. And here's the bottom line. It's not working and it's not bringing about real change. And that's where I said something had to be revolutionized. Something has to change here. And the change is right here
Hmm.
with me. So I decided, like, what's that change look like? Well, that change is true caring. And it has to come from inside of me. I had to say, I want every gender, I want every race with me because I love them, not because it's forced upon me, you know?
Yeah,
And that's the change that has to come. And it's a revolution because it's a
yeah,
revolution within yourself. And that's where it starts. That's where it
yeah. Because
starts.
people start. A lot of people, like you said, you get in a boardroom, people that's ticking off the box, and you think, well, it's a special interest group, their environmental group, and they don't really believe it, and they're not really wholeheartedly into it, and
Mm-hmm,
they're taking the path of least resistance to do it, and
mm-hmm,
and so you have to kind of get that point of view of like, do you actually really believe in equality? Do you actually believe in saving the planet, saving Gaia?
yeah,
That you have a feel that
yeah,
it's real. That you're not one of these people that says, "Oh, global warming is a con." It's like, really? It's like, wait, it's like there are certain people that want to push that because they're still
yeah,
tied to that, and it
yeah,
makes people feel good to kind of be this kind of like, oh, I don't believe the hype
yeah.
in in terms of being a more open person. And just I grew up, with a very kind of holistic point of view. I went to Bowdoin College in Maine, very
Mm-hmm,
kind of Socratic method. And I see
yeah.
one of the problems with a lot of people today is they're so narrow.
Mm-hmm,
I'm in software design, I'm in art, I'm in podcasting. I don't have a comp sci degree. I just had this idea that I could learn. I can continue to learn, and I work with people who are like programmers, but I've been in software development for 25 years and I'm not a programmer. So I'm a business analyst. And so I look at things kind of like relearning things all the time, like having to like figure out and build up the ability to have that kind of Socratic method argument of like what is the business purpose of what we're doing? What is the real reason why we're doing it? Not just tick the box, but to
mm-hmm,
actually really understand the problem. I think a lot of people don't look at the problems. They just like think in narrow silos and they don't look at things like in a very holistic means. And I think part of the spiritual process is to actually see the interconnection like between people and things and the planet is that part of what you do with like spiritual principles?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, I think that's one of the number one principles is to understand our interconnectedness and to know that whatever I'm doing does affect the whole. I mean, it does, whether, and if everybody thought that way and really consciously moved through their life that way, we wouldn't have the problems we have today, right? So absolutely, for
Hmm.
me, principle number one, I would say, is to come from a place of love, but that's not an easy thing to do. It's extremely vulnerable. It's a very vulnerable place, but I don't care. I'm going to love anyway. And if I get my heart crushed, it's crushed, but I'm going to love anyway. And I think that's like the first place for me. And then the second place is underneath all of that is to know that I matter. What I think, what I feel, how I am in the world, it matters to everyone. And to me, I feel like when a leader like embodies that aspect, you can do no
Hmm.
harm. At the very minimum. At the very minimum, you can do
Yeah.
no harm. So I mean,
Well, I think there's a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, the problem we have today is like the inspirational leaders of the 60s, you know, that talked about like that you got to value your fellow person, like that you've got to look at, kind of what Dr. King said, you know, that idea that you got to judge me by the content of my character and what I can bring to the table. And some people believed it and they didn't believe it, but it is kind of like that's what it is. You can be in your camp, but what do we end up getting today? We get this camp where people want to ban books. People want to stop people from voting because they don't vote the way they want to vote. They want to, pollute the water and say it's okay because they say it's okay.
yeah,
And it was like, because it's like if you control the narrative, you can say whatever you want and you can make people believe whatever they want, but that's actually not the truth. And so
right.
people are living in a world where, what the information you get, you have to have some critical thinking because where is it
Yeah,
coming from?
yeah,
And a lot
yeah.
of people just take what they see on social media and they just take it at face value without doing any reading. It's not like they're reading the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Village Voice. It's like you just take what somebody says and that's it.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's critical thinking. I think is definitely on the decline, and I think that's probably one of the major factors in my change was I am a critical thinker, and I'm definitely somebody who recognizes patterns, and I think that also plays into my desire to do what I'm doing because I do see patterns and I do see directionally where things are headed, not just like economically, because I am an economist and I'm an economic intuitive, but I also see things where things are headed from a civil, from a humanity perspective. You can see where the patterns are
Yeah,
headed,
civil
and
society.
that's mhm. Yeah. So that's,
I
I
mean, the
mean,
big
I was,
thing. Yeah,
mhm. No,
you
go
go.
ahead, please. No, I think
Well, I
that
think
that's
like
was
I was a yeah. But
the
part of what I did in college was I was a sociology and political science major. And part of what I understood was like the microcosm and the macrocosm of sociology, right? And so a lot of times people like they're affected by anomie or they're dislocated or they feel like they're outsiders. I think there's a lot of anomie with a lot of people that feel resentment. And then they want to latch onto these kind of dystopian type people, personalities. They're out there that are rallying cry for the oligarch or the dictator type of mindset. And oh, I can solve all that, but it's really like they just solving their grievance and say their grievance is tied to your grievance without
Mhm,
you thinking about the details. Like that you get into the Mussolini, Stalin, Hitler
mhm.
mindset. And there's
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah.
It's rampant across the planet on Eastern
Mhm,
philosophies and Western philosophies. People like this, and it's an
mhm,
easy answer because it doesn't take a lot of work to kind of get out. And some people want the easy answer, but it's harder to do the harder work of the critical
mhm,
thinking.
mhm, mhm. Independent thinking, I think, is really important. And I I think we're going through. I don't know if you ever read the book, The Fourth Turning, but I do think there's some truth to that book. It's really critical. I think you should read it if you have not. About like it really talks about the 4 generations, 25 years, 25, 25, and 25, and how it repeats after the fourth turning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look, we're in the period near the Great Depression. We're in the period where there was a lot of totalitarian attitudes, and there wasn't a lot of critical thinking at that time. So that book really, after I saw what I saw, and
Yeah,
I
it's
know
really
what I
hard.
know, and I feel what I feel, it just kind of like it was an interesting piece of history, how to look at things. So I thought it was intriguing, and yeah. So it's just a suggestion for you to read.
Yeah, definitely. Because
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, with a lot of those things like Frantz Fanon, Wretched Earth, and reading a lot of Nietzsche and Sartre, and all the political philosophies from socialism to communism to reading the Federalist Papers and Common Sense. You see, how many Americans actually read the Articles of the Confederation or the Declaration of Independence or the actual
My husband
Constitution?
has.
But then they don't understand what these people in politics today go and tell you something, and you don't know your civics. You don't
Yeah,
understand the system. And so many people today, compared to like the 60s or the 50s, it seems like they don't understand the
yeah,
structure and don't
yep.
understand when somebody's breaking the norms and somebody's
Mm-hmm.
actually violating the core of like this 14th Amendment section 3. There's things but you don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't pay attention, and then you can get snowed because you don't know. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem I have is like, you tell immigrants they have to learn it, and then the citizens don't know it. I mean, if they want to go for their citizen exam, they got to know what it is, but then you don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. I think people need to have a basic level of understanding to be a productive citizen, a caring citizen that understands our way of life, or we're going to end up being like what happened in Germany, and then suddenly
Yeah.
like, oh, what we just gave the keys to somebody, we didn't see that
Mm-hmm.
coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting. Like I agree that we have to understand all of that and the implications of it and what it means, and I also think it's a deeper understanding too of, and I think maybe we've just had it easy for so long, that we don't know what it's like to have it hard, in terms of, what it means to not have freedom. You know,
Yeah.
I don't, I travel a lot. And
Hmm.
sometimes I go to some countries and I'm like, wow, I feel really free here. Wow, feels like I'm free. What can I
It's
say?
interesting. I lived in Japan from 2004 to 2006, and a lot of people told me not to go there. Right? They told me I was going to have a lot of problems. And the one thing I found that was very interesting to me, spending, and it's people say, well, they're very xenophobic. It's okay, they're this and that, and I understand what they told me. But I was there. I lived there. I lived in Tokyo and near Roppongi for like 2 years. And my daughter went to Japanese kindergarten, preschool. My wife was there with me too. And the one thing I found is like I can just say that I felt like a human being in Tokyo, in Japan, where I was respected for what I could do because I was there to do a job, software design. And even in the US today, I never felt the level of respect that I got there based on what I could do. Now, people would tell
Interesting.
you, well, how could that be? Because this is supposed to be the place where that happens. But I found that was the place where I was actually more respected. That kind of tells you a little about where we are.
Mm, interesting. That's very interesting. Hmm. Yeah, I guess, I'd love to see them respecting you for who you are too. And I'm sure that was it, not just what you can do, but who you are as well, right? As a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, it
Hmm.
was like there was a level of respect because Japanese kind of society, at least what I experienced, was this the whole thing is like I was a gaijin, right? But they gave me a level of respect that I have not experienced here, where I could
Yeah.
be slighted here with microaggressions since I was 10 years old. People saying don't go on the bus, I'm a child of the 70s, like busting and people yelling at me for being at the bus stop, you know, and
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
like I didn't get that kind of stuff in Japan. I didn't, and even my daughter could walk down the street and somebody could yell an epithet in 2023. So the problem I had is like my daughter didn't get that in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And so my issue is like there's a certain level of kind of respecting a person
Mm.
that somehow we've lost general respect to the point of individualism becoming so important to people that they can just do whatever they want without thinking about the consequences of actually living in a civil society.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that's part about also the spiritualism. Like I'm a Buddhist, and the Eastern philosophies sometimes have some kind of karma. Like if you put out bad energy, you get bad energy. If you put out good energy, you get good energy. But people don't believe that,
Mhm.
right? They act another way.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, that's what I've seen in business. I don't know what to say. Like in leadership, like I don't think, I think people like call it karma or just call it however you want to phrase it. Um, I don't think people understand that their actions do create a reciprocal response, and they will, you know, whether you know it or not, you're paying for that action in some way. Whether your soul is suffering or whatever it is, whether you're feeling guilt but you have no clue. I mean, who wants any of that? That was just where I stand. It's like, be clean as you can be human, bring your feelings into play here, and then just be. And then this way, all that karma is not going to follow you. All that bad juju isn't going to follow.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's the idea of like idealistic values being realistic. Well, like if you think about the cases where people did things that were, not morally correct, like knowing that you have a product that causes cancer,
Hmm.
knowing you have a process that's polluting the water, knowing that you're not you're fouling the environment, but and you know it, and you studied it, and then you figure out the cost of it, and you say, well, that's the cost of doing business, and then
Yeah.
eventually you get pushed, to the brink, and you go
Yeah.
out of business, like asbestos companies,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you're there's certain, you can look at the history of
Yeah.
companies not actually doing the right thing, and then what's
Mhm.
the result? They get hit with these billion-dollar lawsuits, and then they kind of go bankrupt, and then they're not around.
Mhm.
But it's like the idea that like is that idealistic, or is that actually doing something that's actually going to kind of set your future to be a positive result in the environment that you're actually doing business in?
Is what idealistic? Behaving poorly and or not expecting people to behave poorly? I
Yeah.
mean, is it idealistic to think that somebody shouldn't be polluting the water? Definitely not. What I think the problem is I think industry as a whole is just short-sighted. It's Wall Street's focus, like, okay, let's get our numbers, let's do, come on. This is the problem, I think, overall. And I also think that there's not enough separation between our businesses and our politicians. I think there's, the centers of influence, I think, it's a big issue. And I think there's a short-sightedness towards profits. But that's not where I'm focused, to be honest with you. And I don't think it's idealistic to change course. I really don't. We're humans, we live on this planet, and we need to preserve our planet for ourselves and for our children and for future generations, right? So I think it's not
Mhm.
idealistic. If anything, I think it's realistic. I think it has to be done, but it has to be thought out. All these conversations that everyone's having around social responsibility, like quotas and all these things, it's not creating a better place. It's not creating equality in the workplace at all. It's not creating better employees. It's just simply not. So that's why I'm like, the antidote to that to me is bringing the spiritual principles of capitalism, like bringing safety into business so you can have conversations that matter, that make a difference, and like a conversations about your feelings, emotions, or what have you. So I don't think there's anything idealistic about it. I think, if anything, it's realistic and it's what we need to do. I mean, pollute water. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I think,
I mean, so on.
yeah, it seems,
Really.
well, I mean, if you think about it, like, companies, with industrialization, they got into this whole kind of structure of the bell curve and the idea that people are going to be in that cubicle on that assembly line. And you had previously before that, artisans and people who had a lot of creativity. And then you kind of
Mhm,
push all that out and make people just repeat the same thing. Whether you're
mhm.
on the assembly line or even in the cubicle, you just measure the performance on a bell curve. And then, are you really going to capture a very creative person on that curve? You probably aren't. And then you keep on wanting, I want somebody's going to be innovative, but you're pushing all the innovation down because you don't want to hear something from the creative people because you want everybody to be in this kind of box of this, like they're a robot. Like, well, you want to create AI before AI. You want to turn people into like this kind of robotic mindset and then think they're going to have innovation. When you don't, you kind of, you know, you stifle 'em. So how are you going to get innovation when you stifle any creativity?
It's impossible. I mean, the environment we've created, honestly, at my company it does foster tremendous creativity in everyone. It may be in a financial company, an investment company, but we really do. I put a lot of energy towards creativity, towards my team being creative. And some people are just very, very, one brain, like what is it, right or left brained,
Left
very
brain.
analytical,
Yeah.
and that's what their job is and that's what they want. But I also have, team members who are lateral thinkers who use both hemispheres of their brain. So they're not only taking data and understanding it, but they're actually using their higher knowing, their intuition. I encourage their
Mhm.
intuition. I encourage them to follow that, and through that we end up creating all kinds of wonderful things. So yeah,
I
it's
think,
really good.
yeah, it seems like there's a fear where people want to have a very predictable outcome. Well,
Hmm.
the thing is, like when you're trying to do innovations, like, well, you're gonna have things that don't work, and so are you
We
gonna
got
call
things
those
that don't work.
failures?
Yeah.
If are you gonna look at it like if I'm a musician, right? I do 99 demos, and you could say those 99 demos are all failures, or what that 100th demo is the one that actually does well. Is that just a bunch of steps up the rung to get to that number 100, or all those failures? I think it's the process. And if you're an
Hmm.
engineer, that's what happens, right? That you have to experiment. You have to come up with things that you can't always get it on the first try. But so many
Hmm.
people are so time management control, want to force something to happen before it's actually ready to happen. That doesn't always work. And I would say most of the time, it doesn't work at all. I mean, software design, we're building stuff that never existed. We try to timestamp it, but it's like, we never did that before. So you want it on the plan, but we don't hit the deadlines a lot of the times. We won't because it's totally new, and you
Hmm.
can't always measure to the second when something new is going to happen. It takes time for it to happen.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree with that. It's the stepping stones. I don't think anything is a failure. You're making your way towards success. I don't know. That's how I see it. Hmm. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but
I
if
I have.
everybody has like, yeah, black and white, it's hard.
Yeah. So, we've done several things that didn't work out, I have to say, but in the end, it all, like, we did, when we redid my company, when we basically redefined our company, rebranded, that's when we knew we got it right. We got all cylinders running, and when we were an ESG manager, I mean, like I said, we exited after I just was like, look at this is There's too much greenwashing. No matter, we looked at everything left and right and center, and yet at the end, even though we launched as an ESG SRI manager, and it was our great intention to do something good, we ended up not believing in the process. Mm-hmm. So that was a creative, we were.
Well, you have to,
we really.
there's a level of like being, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to believe in what you're doing, or otherwise you're selling like a bill of goods, And so it's always good to have that level of honesty. And sometimes you wonder in capitalism, is it just a sales? Is it just a profit, or do people actually believe in the widget that they're selling? Do they actually really believe in what they're doing? And I think that's when you bring a spiritual process in, then you have to have some authentic belief of why you're doing it and your motivation, right? And you have to feel that it's actually not going to be hurting things, right? If you're going to believe in that kind of mindset, that if it hurts people or is destructive or negative, then that's not very spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we backed ourselves into a corner to a certain degree. Right now, we have a lot to reverse, I think, and and maybe not a lot to reverse, but we have a new road to hoe, I think, and a new road to pave, and it can come with, I think, a little bit of pain in the process. So, I think where things are headed economically, I do think that we're in for a choppy road ahead. And I think it's inevitable. Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about things like AI and spiritual principles and having like this type of mindset that considers the humanity?
Yeah,
Because a
this
lot
is,
of times when I look at AI, I'm kind of wondering.
yeah. No, I mean, it's all in the hands that use it, right? So it's like anything, like Nikola Tesla's technology, right? I mean, you know about Nikola Tesla.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's all whose hands it's in, whose hands is it in, and how are they choosing to use it for good or for bad? And that's always the question. So it's the same thing with AI. I mean, even with the internet, when the internet started, okay, was it for good or was it for bad? Well, I could be the first one to say in 1995, I'm grateful for the internet because the internet is what helped me heal from MS. I had MS in 1995. I went on the internet and I found
Mhm.
all these people who healed naturally from MS. Well, guess what? I did too. Thank you for the internet. It really, was a source
Mhm.
of information that I didn't have access to that led to my healing, right? So in the right hands for the right purpose, of course. But if there's malintention in it, I think not. Now, AI, I don't know if you know, I mean, surely it's been it's being more rapidly used than the internet, adopted than the internet,
Yeah,
and I'm a little
yeah.
I'm a little frightened about the fact that it could, take a life of its own and take over. And then getting back to your earlier comment about critical thinking, I am worried about how that's going to affect the critical thinking mind of our younger generation and even people who rely on it too much. I'm concerned about that. So, I was a step parent for a long time, and we limited our children's use of social media for a reason because we wanted them to
Yeah, I
have
think,
critical
yeah.
thinking. So
Well,
I
I
think
think the problem, yeah.
AI
Well, one
used
of the
properly,
issues
I
with,
think it's
well, I
good.
think
Sorry.
AI, one of the big problems with it is kind of like what happened in the music industry with sampling. Like in the music industry, people initially did sampling, and then the artists they sampled didn't get any of the money. So
Oh,
they just kind of used them and then they made a bunch of money, right? The problem I see in AI right now, when it comes into it taking art like music and photography, and actually my daughter's a graphic artist, and she's with a group of a collective of graphic artists that are very upset about the learning that AI does. actually takes a lot of people's work, and then people think the AI came up with its own idea, and it's actually using
Mm.
artists and not crediting or paying them.
Yeah, that's scary.
And so that's actually not new. It's not something new. It's something we've seen before. People stealing people's rights. So there's a
Yeah.
moral kind of argument that just because you can do it doesn't
Doesn't
mean
mean
you
it's
should do it.
done.
Just
Yeah,
because you,
exactly.
yeah, you just because you have a calculator doesn't mean when you're taking your algebra test you should use the calculator in your algebra test, because you can't do that, right? AI is like that cheat. It's like you could do it and you get the perfect score, but is that actually really you? Or are you just using something and it's not actually you getting that score? The AI got the
Right.
score for you, or the AI made the
Yeah.
money for you and it didn't pay somebody else. And so it's using people. So that's the
Mhm.
argument I have with it. Like, as long as it doesn't use people or steal, then fine. But if it
And then
does,
how
then
do
you
you
have to,
prevent that? Yeah. And
yeah,
then how do you prevent that, right? I mean, how do you actually prevent that from happening?
you got to pay
That's the
people royalties.
yeah. 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 Interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm mixed about it. I'm not a big user of it. I mean, I do see its advantages for certain things, for certain types of research. I get it, um, but I do see, just like the internet, where we can have a slippery slope. Because the internet, I mean, social media has been
Yeah,
a bit of a slippery slope. Hmm.
especially for young people. I mean, there's a lot of, I've talked to therapists that said a lot of young kids have been damaged with the body dysmorphia and all kinds of things, bullying, cyberbullying, all kinds of really bad aspects. For whatever the good aspects are, there are kids who have actually died because
Yeah, I
of the
know.
internet.
Yeah,
Their
yeah,
parents
or
actually are trying to create regulations to
yeah,
prevent the cyberbullying or prevent the kind
yeah,
of really bad practices that give people, psychological issues, with their
yeah,
body and with their behavior and eating disorders and all kinds of other things. And so there's
mhm,
always like the flip side of any technology. You have to understand it and then actively start to maybe put boundaries on it that are societal
yeah.
protections for the
Well,
weak or the
yeah, I mean,
or the
I
young.
think, yeah, and I think that's, I mean, I have to say, I think where parents have to do some, get involved. I mean, let me tell you, it wasn't fun
Yeah,
to limit our children from having access to phones anytime they wanted, social media, not allowing them to take these things into school. I mean, it just, it wasn't fun. It was always a fight, but you know what? We did it, and we're happy we did, because the kids know how to communicate, and they know how to be engaged in life. They're young adults, and they know how to be in the world. So, I mean, I do have to say, I think that's part of where we have to show up as parents, as leaders, to, help with that. I don't believe in censorship or anything like that, but I think as a parent, you have to
yeah,
pay attention to where your kids are focusing. Hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Because you can't depend on the society because like you said, like when we have the conversation about caring capitalism, the companies that build these things, the apps and the tools on the they they're bottom line in it for profit. So they're not always gonna. Some people started having the net be a nanny for their kid, right?
Yeah.
Babysit their kid. And that's probably not a good idea because if you think about, well, they don't have that caring in front of their capitalism. They're trying to make
Yeah.
maximum profit. And that doesn't mean that they're going to take care of your kid.
Hmm.
so, so like you do have to have that responsibility because you can't, people aren't going to always do the right thing. And that's where the kind of idea of this caring capitalism, you can't be kind of with a kind of, I don't know, naive belief that, oh, they're going to do the right thing. You have to
Hmm.
make that happen. People have to make that happen. It's not going to happen because they're going to choose to do it. The parents and consumers are going to have to push for them to do it.
Exactly. Totally agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah. That's the quandary.
So how do you put actions in your life and in your business and your community to kind of thread the needle to have
Mm,
this concept of caring capitalism or caring
yeah.
type of spiritualism within the economy?
Okay. So essentially, the bottom line is it starts with me as a leader, as the owner of the company. And I went into a deep dive. I looked at myself. I said, okay, where am I not showing up as a leader that's authentic to who I am? And I'm a big love bug. That's who I am. So, but also it was, there's aspects of me. I'm a deeply intuitive person, and I wasn't always letting that shine through deeply. And also, what I know is when you are that sensitive and you are that loving, it's vulnerable. But you know what? One day I was working with my executive coach, who's now my husband, and he challenged me. He totally challenged me, and he said to me he felt like I had two different personalities, my work personality and my personality in the world. And he said, as long as I don't, he's a very talented executive coach, by the way. He said, if I don't marry the two, I will never really have true satisfaction in my company. And I thought, wow, he's like absolutely right. And so I went on the journey and I said, okay, take me there, because he was my executive coach at the time. And he took me on a journey, and I realized like I was so afraid of being rejected, and that is why I wasn't fully showing up as who I am. And that's when I realized like so many leaders I work with, they were the same way. They were scared too. Like it's to admit you're afraid to be rejected or to not fit in or to what have you. And so that's where it started with me. And by really being honest with my employees and actually standing in my truth, they followed suit. They went along with me. They said, I want to be happy. I want to be who I am. I want to do the work. And so each one of my employees has access to not just the Pascal, the executive coach on team, but also other modalities. And my team followed suit. And I can honestly say I have a very well-adjusted, loving, kind, talented, because we manage money. So we're not in our minutia and our garbage every day. We're in a flow of content, of happiness. So we
Mhm.
started within our company, and then like we focus our efforts on the whole. So when we give money, for example, um, I want to support our local farmers because I believe in local farming. I believe in local organic farming. So we'll have, I'm not really a meat eater, but we'll have like $1,000 worth of meat, an animal slaughtered and brought to the food banks. Because one of the things that really bothers me is that low income people can't eat good food. They eat
Yeah, they
that
get
toxic
canned food.
garbage that's in the grocery
Yeah,
store, and I cannot stand that. Okay. So this is like me really standing in my truth. I am not okay with anybody eating that food because I think it's garbage. And so where do I put my
yeah,
money? I put my money there. The other thing is we every month we have like a free what we call constellation. So we actually bring the community in, whoever wants to come in, and our clients for free. And we bring right now Pascal's the expert on team who runs these things called constellations, which are used a lot in Europe to help people resolve, like either businesses resolve like figure out who's going to buy them or who to partner with or what product to launch. That's there, but also who to hire, or as a person individually, not an institution, you can work on whatever individual issues you might have, and we run that every month at
mhm,
least. So that's our give back. And why we do that is because I believe that capitalism will only change when we raise the consciousness, not quotas, but raise the consciousness. And
yeah,
if we raise consciousness, we make the right decisions to your Buddhist perspective of right choice, right action, right choice, right words, right thought. It brings all
yeah.
the right action to heal humanity. So that's really in a nutshell how I do it. And that's how we function in the community.
And that to really kind of see change from kind of this like this profit loss motivation that's very cold and calculating to the point where, people don't give things the time. There's a lot of things today where in the past, because you couldn't get the number or it took a while to get the number, they was like, oh, that, kill that project, stop that
Mm,
project. And a lot of times things are not profitable, at all. Like, there are tons of examples of things that were not profitable, but, nobody just immediately cut them off. And then
mhm.
eventually they found a market. But if you're looking for that, always looking for the quick hit, you don't have this kind of consciousness things like what if what you're doing actually helps people in an area where your profitability isn't like the max profitability, right?
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
allows access to a group of people that don't get access. Well, there's
Yeah.
some people who just kill it because it doesn't have the max profitability, and that's where the mindset I think you're talking about. There's a point where you're like, well, why not have these different levels, and why does everything have to be all or nothing? Why can't you have some level of kind of community involvement where you're not is not totally profit isn't the only equation? Because if you create that customer and you build that customer, they're going to be able to move up. But
Mhm.
maybe it's not something you looked at overnight, but it's something that takes 5 years, 10 years. Like people
Yeah.
don't, I don't think some people think like that anymore.
Yeah.
There are
There
some
was a
people
movement.
happen that did think
Mhm.
like that, but
It's interesting because there was a movement called slow money at one point that I think was introduced about 10 years ago. And that's what you're talking about is slow money. It's like you put your money in and you let it work and you recreate a product that's maybe slower to launch or like, so yeah, I'm with you. I mean, the problem is we rush to profit, I think, too quickly. And I mean, I understand companies have to be viable. I get it. I'm an investor. I need companies to be viable, but there's a way to do this. It's my feeling anyway.
yeah, because I mean, because sometimes you can have like a startup that does this, that gets out there and then they get bought out and then they kind of
Hmm.
kill it, because
Yeah,
they get
that
brought
happens
into
a
another
lot.
bigger mega.
That
Yeah,
happens
and
a
it
lot. And I
kills the
understand
kind
that.
of low. Yeah, maybe
I
you can
understand that.
elaborate.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
understand,
So that to
people
me
need
is
to exit. Hmm. Hmm. That's hard. That's hard.
so
I
I
work
guess
with a lot
that's
of
the
business owners.
mindset.
It is. I work with a lot of
So
business owners who want to
that's like the
exit.
mindset.
Hmm. Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And is that the real goal of what you did? Like if you start something, is your goal to just sell it off and then not care about what happens to it and you take your profit and leave and go to the next thing? Or did you really want to build something and have an impact? And I think it's a mindset
It's a
because
mindset.
if,
Hmm.
if you can kind of get more people to say like, hey, I want to stick with this because I believe in this and it's not all about selling it. And within a society that's driven with certain values, like, okay, well, the main thing is for me to get my $1 million or my $1 billion, or what is the main thing to actually impact the world and do something like make it so people have something that's affordable and interesting and a powerful tool to help the world rather than a tool that's going to give me the quickest buck. And maybe sometimes you can make it so it works together that somehow you can be profitable and save the world. But it seems
Hmm.
always like maybe that's not the case.
No, I think it can be. I think it's just a change in mindset. That's all. I think it's just I mean, it's a change in the way we calibrate things. So at the end of the day, I think it's all possible. Honestly, I think it is all
Hmm.
possible. I'm doing it. I'm a Wall Street firm. I'm doing it the best that I can with with what's in front of me. You know, so.
So in order to kind of take your model and kind of replicate it, are you involved with trying to get other people, other minds in business to see your point of view and get in a collective? of a lot of other people that have that point of view and kind of push it?
100%. Yes, yes, absolutely. Like, I felt like the best way I can do this is to be the example, and I am now. I really am. I'm truly happy at, every
Mhm.
level. And I'm not afraid of who I am, and I'm not afraid of expressing it and being it in the world and being it in business. And my husband and I created a company, United Interstates of Freedom, where we actually do he's a very skilled executive coach. And I'm decent, and we work together with companies to help them. We did a program together for a company, and I think they were just shocked by how honest all their employees were in that conversation. This company, very interesting, is on the merge. They're buying other companies, and they, we told them to not just bring management in, but also bring some of the employees in. We wanted a sampling, of all of it. And
Mhm.
we ended up having this very open discussion. And you couldn't help it, because the way Pascal led them down this pathway, they had to have an honest discussion. And one of the employees, you can see, she's like, and she's, fairly new hire. She's like, why are you doing this? Why are you buying these companies? Like, what are you doing? And then she shared, and then we prodded a little deeper, and we can see, like, she came from another company that was a high acquisition company, and they worked her to the bone. They didn't value her. They worked her. They didn't do anything for her. They just worked her because she was the worker bee.
Mhm.
And you can see where that's the question she wanted to ask. Are you going to use me? Are you going to, like, ring me out and
Mhm.
buy all these companies and give me nothing? And we got her to say that, not those words, but that came out. And
Yeah.
we saw, like,
Yeah.
management really soften and be like, whoa, like, we need to tie these people into more of our profits. Like, it was that, like, aha moment, like, wait a second, we need to do more for these people.
Yeah.
So, you know what? There's very well intended. They were so well intended. They are such an amazing group of people, but we're so unaware of how they were being perceived. So, yeah, that's the work we do. That's my next work
Yeah.
in my
I
life.
think perception. Well, perception. Yeah. Perception's reality. I took a lot of philosophy classes, but a lot of people don't understand it. Right? They don't put themselves in the shoes of the empathetic kind of capitalism. Can you be an
Mhm,
empathetic capitalist? Can you
mhm.
understand the consequences all the way through all the levels of what you're doing? And maybe, like you said, soften what you're doing and maybe start to understand that, like you throw a little, you know, sugar on it rather than just coming in and doing an acid bath.
Yes,
Maybe you can
exactly.
have some conversations with people at levels that you didn't think you could, right?
Mhm.
And I think that mindset change is very important. And the more people you can convince to have those open discussions, I think that's the heart of what you're saying with like a caring capitalism to me is the open. It's like in a relationship is having that communication. And
Yeah,
even at the microcosm, which I go and bring in,
yeah,
microcosm of an individual with their partner, and then the macrocosm of like employees and their executives, you need to have a communication pattern where it's not
yeah.
us against them, where it's like, why don't you pull together? If everybody's pulling together, you're going to have more creativity and more buy-in to what the company's doing than
Mhm,
if it was all coming down from on high and say, you will do this, you will do that without having any kind of impact
mhm.
to what you're,
Agreed.
understanding what your impact is.
Agreed. Agreed. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's the change I want to see, and that's really what, that's where I'm headed now. As someone who's done it, I know what a CEO faces. I do. You got your profits. You got to take care of your employees. You have to balance so many things.
So if people go to investwithwillow.com, what will they find there? How does that like get them started in on this path?
Oh, okay. So if they go to investwithwillow.com, if they're interested in investments, that's what we do. So they'll be able to see our philosophy, which is very steeped in, it's like a top-down approach. We look at the economy. We really understand patterns. That's my big thing, patterns. You know, I was able to call the tech bubble and the financial crisis because I pay attention to patterns. And that's I think the secret sauce. So they'd be able to see how we manage money, and if they were interested, they'd be able to contact us there. And then, of course, if they were interested in coaching, they can contact me there, and that we would arrange for that as well.
So if there was somebody contacts you for the coaching type of assistance, they would start on the path of getting to be more conscious. You start to teach that in your coaching part of your business. That you're kind of like a traditional life coach.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of certificates that I've had over the years in coaching because I've done it, for a good 20 years as a side gig, so to speak. My husband Pascal, who's my partner in the United Interstates of Freedom, I mean, he's been an executive coach in Europe for, I don't know, 30 years or something. So he's worked with very large companies, Fortune 500 companies. He's from Belgium, so he's worked with a lot of companies from France, Belgium, Netherlands, England. And so we work, I mean, it depends upon what they need. We work on some things together, and he works on some things on his own. Just depends upon what they want. If they're really looking to bring spiritual principles to their business, to really incorporate their authentic self into their business, like, become whole, then they'd be working with both of us for sure. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. So you have a partner kind of duo effort.
It's amazing because it's really balances the masculine and the feminine form of business, which I think is really important, to be honest with you. Like, as a woman in business, I usually execute it from a very masculine form. And when I was able to really embody my masculine and feminine aspect of me, everything flowed so much easier. It just became easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we complement each other. We have different skill sets. I'm highly intuitive, so I can really see where people are blocked. And he's also he's also highly intuitive. So he knows how, like, I almost know how to shake the tree loose and show where all the wounds are, so to speak. And he knows how to heal the wounds. Let's put it that way. He knows how to put Humpty Dumpty back together.
That's a good,
yeah. It's a
good
really
combination.
wonderful. Yeah,
That's
it
a
really
great
is.
combination.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's very important to have a good rapport and kind of with be able to have kind of access. In today's world, it's like access to your left and right brain, kind of the feminine and the masculine. The kind of holistic thinking of like looking at people and understanding that there's a lot of depth to how human beings operate. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there's been people who thought maybe it was only all left brain or all right brain, or it's all like male centered, and they understand that there's a lot of room today to actually look at all aspects of human behavior and actually incorporate the art of it and the spirituality of it and the soul of it,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of people say, well, no, it's only the logic, right? It can't just all be the logic.
No, when you marry both, you have the perfect situation. You really do. I feel it's actually the perfect form. And when I do see, like I said, the last company we worked with, I'm seeing that start to come together, and I really like it. It's a company, I would say it's pretty dominated by males at the top, but they're very thoughtful, and they're very open to really looking at all sides. So I'm really optimistic that they're going to do some really great things. Mm-hmm. So that makes me
That's
happy.
very, very cool. What's cool what you're doing in the business world. You're the first person that actually has brought the term caring capitalism to the Family Electric Goes podcast. And we hope we get more people who have this point of view. maybe you'll get some people that want to talk to you about that from our former people who've been on the show. Maybe we'll contact you, but we encourage all of our audience to always check out the URLs of the people we talk to. And I think this conversation has been very interesting. And there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs that are into this show and, looking for a different point of view, a different way of looking at the idea of caring capitalism. And I think that we brought that to the table tonight. And thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for hosting me. It's wonderful.
Have a good night.
You too.